Captain Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the cargo manifest for the third time that morning. The Liberty's Edge was not the fastest ship in the galaxy, and it certainly was not the prettiest, but it was his ship. The old cargo freighter had been his home for the past 8 years, carrying supplies between the outer colonies and the main trade routes. "Captain, we've got an incoming transmission," called Amy Foster from the communications station. The young woman had joined his crew only 6 months ago, but she had already proven herself to be sharp and reliable. "It's coming from the Veltari sector, sir." "High priority channel," Jake raised an eyebrow. The Veltari were one of the most powerful alien races in the galaxy. Their empire stretched across dozens of star systems, and their technology was centuries ahead of human engineering. What could they possibly want with a simple human cargo ship? "Put it through, Amy," Jake said, settling into his captain's chair. His first officer, Lisa Parker, looked up from her station with curiosity. She had been with him since the beginning, and Jake trusted her judgment more than anyone else in the galaxy. The main screen flickered to life, and Jake had to resist the urge to gasp. The face looking back at him was clearly alien, but beautiful in a way that was almost impossible to describe. Her skin had a pale blue tint, and her eyes were a deep violet color that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Delicate patterns that looked like crystal formations ran along her cheekbones and down her neck. "I am Princess Zarathil of the Veltari Empire," the alien woman said, her voice carrying a musical quality that made Jake think of wind chimes. "I must speak with the captain of this vessel immediately." Jake straightened in his chair. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison. What can I do for you, Your Highness?" The princess leaned forward, and Jake could see desperation in those violet eyes. "Captain Morrison, I need your help. My father, Emperor Kethron, has been poisoned by enemies within our own court. The healers have tried everything, but the poison is unlike anything they have seen before. He will die within days unless I can find the antidote. I'm sorry to hear that," Jake said carefully, "but I'm not sure how a human cargo ship can help with something like this." "Shouldn't you be talking to your own military?" "That is exactly the problem," Princess Zarathil replied. "The poison was given to my father by someone close to him, someone he trusted. I cannot know who can be trusted within our own forces. But there is another reason why I must ask for your help specifically." She paused, and Jake could see her choosing her words carefully. "The antidote exists, Captain Morrison. It can be found in the ancient ruins on the planet Zarian 7. These ruins were built by the Precursors, a race that vanished long before any of our civilizations reached the stars. But the ruins are protected by ancient laws and by technology that even we do not fully understand." Pete Collins, the ship's engineer, looked up from his workstation. The older man had been fixing ships longer than Jake had been alive, and he had heard plenty of stories about the mysterious Precursors. "What kind of laws?" he asked. Princess Zarathil turned her attention to Pete. "According to the ancient texts, only those who are pure of heart and unbound by the politics of the galaxy can enter the sacred sites. For thousands of years, no member of any established galactic civilization has been able to pass through the barriers." "But humans can?" Lisa asked, stepping closer to the screen. "Yes," the princess said, and for the first time, Jake heard hope in her voice. "During the recent war with the Zephyrian Raiders, human ships rescued civilians from 7 different species without asking for payment or political favors. Human soldiers died protecting alien colonies that had no strategic value to Earth. Your people have done things that our philosophers said were impossible." Jake felt uncomfortable with the praise. "We just did what was right." "Exactly, Princess," Zarathil said. "That is why the Precursor barriers recognize humans as worthy. You are the only species in the galaxy that the ancient systems will allow to enter the ruins." Amy looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm reading several large ships approaching our position. They're Veltari design, but they're not broadcasting friendly signals." The princess's expression grew worried. "They have found me. Captain Morrison, I must be honest with you. There are those within our empire who do not want my father to recover. My uncle, General Vextar, believes that he should rule instead. He has been spreading lies about me, saying that I am a traitor for seeking help. From other species? So you're asking us to get involved in a civil war? Lisa asked. I am asking you to help me save my father's life, the princess replied. But I understand that this puts you in danger. If you help me, General Vexstar will consider you enemies of the Empire. However, if you refuse, I fear that something much worse will happen. Cake frowned. What do you mean? Princess Zarathul took a deep breath. The Zephyrian Collective has been building up their forces in the Outer Rim. Our intelligence suggests that they are planning a major invasion of this sector. If my father dies and civil war breaks out in our empire, the Zephyrians will attack immediately. Every human colony in this region will be destroyed. The bridge fell silent. Jake looked at his crew, seeing the same thoughts reflected in their faces. The Zephyrians were known for their brutal tactics. They did not take prisoners and they did not negotiate. If they invaded while the Veltari were fighting among themselves, millions of innocent people would die. Your Highness, Jake said slowly, even if we agree to help you, how do we know that we can trust you? How do we know this isn't some kind of trap? The princess reached into her robes and pulled out a small crystal device. This contains the complete intelligence report on the Zephyrian buildup, including their planned invasion routes and target lists. I am giving this to you as proof of my good intentions. Even if you choose not to help me, you can use this information to warn your colonies. Amy's station chimed with an incoming message. Captain, the Veltari ships are demanding that we surrender Princess Zarathul immediately. They say she's a traitor and a fugitive. Jake looked at the princess on the screen, then at his crew. Pete was already moving toward the engine room, understanding that they might need to run. Lisa was checking the weapon systems, though they all knew that the Liberty's Edge was no match for Veltari warships. Amy was monitoring all frequencies, ready to send out distress calls if necessary. Captain Morrison, Princess Zarathul said urgently, I know I am asking a great deal of you, but I believe that humans are the only hope for peace in this galaxy. My people have become too proud, too set in their ways. We need someone who can see solutions that we cannot. Jake made his decision. Amy, prepare a docking bay for our guest. Lisa, plot a course for the Outer Rim. Pete, I hope you got those engines ready for a hard run. You'll help me? The princess asked, hope and relief clear in her voice. We'll help you, Jake confirmed. But I want you to know that this crew has never backed down from doing what's right, even when it's dangerous. If you're lying to us, if this is some kind of setup, you'll regret it. Princess Zarathul smiled, and Jake was struck again by how beautiful she was. Captain Morrison, I believe that you and your crew are exactly what this galaxy needs. Thank you for giving me hope. The transmission ended, and Jake turned to his crew. Well, folks, looks like we're about to get involved in something a lot bigger than a simple cargo run. Everyone ready? Lisa grinned. When have we ever taken the easy path, Captain? Pete called out from the engine room. Engines are ready, sir. We can outrun those Veltari ships if we push hard enough. Amy nodded from her station. Docking bay is prepared, and I've got emergency channels ready in case we need to call for help. Jake smiled at his crew. They had been through dangerous situations before, but nothing quite like this. Still, he knew he could count on them. All right, then. Let's go save an emperor and maybe prevent a war while we're at it. The Liberty's Edge changed course, heading toward the rendezvous point where Princess Zarathul's small shuttle was waiting. Behind them, the Veltari warships began to pursue, their weapons charging for battle. Jake Morrison and his crew had just made a choice that would change the fate of the galaxy, though they did not know it yet. Princess Zarathul's shuttle docked with the Liberty's Edge just as the first Veltari warship came into weapons range. Jake felt the ship shake as Pete pushed the engines beyond their normal limits, but he knew they needed every bit of speed they could get. The Veltari ships were faster and more heavily armed than his old cargo freighter. Welcome aboard, Your Highness, Jake said as the princess stepped onto his ship. Up close, she was even more impressive than she had appeared on the screen. She moved with a grace that seemed impossible, and her alien features were both beautiful. and strange at the same time. "Thank you, Captain Morrison," she replied, her musical voice carrying easily over the sound of the engines. "I know this puts you and your crew in great danger." "We've been in danger before," Lisa said, checking her weapons panel. "Captain, we've got 3 Valtari cruisers closing in on us. They're demanding we stop and surrender the princess." Jake looked at the tactical display. The enemy ships were arranged in a triangle formation, trying to box them in. "Pete, can you give us more speed?" "I'm trying, Captain." Pete's voice came over the com from the engine room. "But these old engines weren't built for this kind of running. I can maybe squeeze another 10% out of them, but we're going to need more than speed to get out of this." Princess Zarathil stepped forward. "Captain, may I speak to them? Perhaps I can convince my uncle to let us pass." "It's worth a try," Jake said. "Amy, open a channel to the lead ship." The main screen flickered and a stern alien face appeared. Jake could see the family resemblance immediately. General Vextar had the same crystal patterns on his skin as the princess, but his were darker and more pronounced. His violet eyes were cold and angry. "Zarathil," he said, his voice carrying none of the musical quality of the princess's speech. "You have disgraced our family and our empire. Surrender yourself immediately, and I will be merciful to these humans who have been foolish enough to help you." "Uncle," Princess Zarathil replied, standing tall despite the danger. "Father is dying. The poison in his body will kill him within days. I am trying to save his life." General Vextar's expression did not change. "Your father is weak. He has made too many deals with inferior species. The Empire needs strong leadership, not the soft diplomacy that has made us look weak to our enemies." "The Zephyrians are building up their forces," the princess said urgently. "If we fight among ourselves now, they will attack while we are divided. Millions of innocent people will die." "Let them come," the general replied. "When I am emperor, the Valtari will be strong enough to crush any enemy. Now surrender, or I will destroy that pathetic human ship with you aboard it." Jake stepped forward. "General, we're not part of your politics. We're just trying to help. Save a life." Vextar's eyes turned to Jake, and the human captain felt a chill run down his spine. "You dare to speak to me, human? Your species has been in space for barely a century. You are nothing compared to the power of the Valtari Empire." "Maybe so," Jake said calmly. "But we're still not going to hand over someone who came to us for help." The general's face twisted with anger. "Then you will die with her. All ships open fire." The screen went dark, and immediately the Liberty's edge shook as energy bolts struck their shields. Amy's hands flew over her controls, trying to keep the communication systems working while the ship bucked and rolled under the attack. "Shields down to 60%, Lisa reported. "We can't take much more of this." Jake gripped his chair as another blast rocked the ship. "Pete, we need options." "I'm working on it, Captain," Pete replied over the com. "There's an asteroid field about 2 minutes ahead. If we can make it there, we might be able to lose them." "Do it," Jake ordered. "Amy, can you jam their targeting systems?" "I'm trying, sir," Amy said, her fingers dancing over her controls. "But their technology is much more advanced than ours. I can maybe give us a few seconds of confusion, but that's all." Princess Zarathil moved to stand beside Jake's chair. "Captain, I have studied your people's military history. Humans have a reputation for finding creative solutions to impossible problems. Is there anything we can do?" Jake thought for a moment, then smiled. "Amy, can you access the ship's cargo manifest?" "Yes, sir. Why?" "We're carrying a load of industrial mining charges for the Kepler colony. Are they still armed?" Amy's eyes widened with understanding. "Yes, sir. They're fully armed and ready for use." "Pete," Jake called over the com, "can you rig those mining charges to blow behind us? Make it look like we're dumping cargo?" "I can do that, Captain," Pete replied. "But those charges are designed to break up asteroids. They won't do much damage." "To Valtari shields, they don't have to," Jake said. "They just need to create a distraction." The Liberty's edge shuddered again as more energy bolts struck home. The shields were failing, and Jake knew they had only minutes before the Veltari ships would be able to punch through their defenses. "Entering asteroid field now," Lisa announced. "The big rocks should give us some cover." Jake watched the tactical display as his ship weaved between the floating chunks of rock and ice. The Veltari ships were still following, but they had to be more careful now. One wrong move and they could smash into an asteroid. "Now, Pete," Jake ordered, the mining charges shot out from the cargo bay, looking like jettisoned supplies. The Veltari ships ignored them, focusing on their pursuit of the Liberty's Edge, but as the charges drifted between the asteroids, Pete triggered them remotely. The explosions were brilliant flashes of light that lit up the asteroid field like tiny stars. The blasts shattered several large asteroids, sending chunks of rock flying in all directions. More importantly, the bright light overloaded the Veltari ship's sensors for several crucial seconds. "Now," Jake shouted. "Full power to engines." The Liberty's Edge shot forward, using the confusion to put distance between themselves and their pursuers. Pete had somehow found that extra 10% of power, and the old ship flew through the asteroid field like it was built for racing. "We're pulling away," Lisa reported. "The Veltari ships are having trouble navigating through all the debris." Amy looked up from her station with excitement. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors. There's a ship out there, but it's not broadcasting any identification signals." "Can you tell what kind of ship it is?" Jake asked. "It's big, sir. Much bigger than the Veltari cruisers. And it's moving toward us fast." Princess Zarathal's face went pale. "Captain, I think we may have a bigger problem than my uncle's ships." The main screen flickered to life, showing a new contact on the tactical display. The ship was massive, at least 3 times the size of the largest Veltari vessel. Its design was unlike anything Jake had seen before, with sharp angles and weapon ports that seemed to cover every surface. "That's a Zephyrian battleship," the princess said quietly. "They're not supposed to be in this sector." Amy's station chimed with an incoming message. "Captain, the Zephyrian ship is hailing us." "Put it through," Jake said, though he had a bad feeling about what they were about to hear. The face that appeared on the screen was reptilian, with yellow eyes and scales that seemed to shift color in the light. When the alien spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. "Human vessel, you will surrender the Veltari female immediately. She is now a prisoner of the Zephyrian Collective." Jake felt his heart sink. They had escaped from the Veltari ships only to run into something much worse. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy for their cruelty and their refusal to negotiate. "I'm afraid I can't do that," Jake said, hoping his voice sounded more confident than he felt. The Zephyrian's laugh was like broken glass. "Then you will die along with her. But first, you will watch as we destroy every human colony in this sector. The invasion begins now." The screen went dark, and Jake realized that Princess Zarathal had been right about everything. The Zephyrians were already moving, taking advantage of the chaos in the Veltari Empire to begin their attack. "Captain," Amy said urgently, "I'm detecting more Zephyrian ships jumping into the system. Dozens of them." Jake looked at his crew, seeing the determination in their faces despite the impossible odds. "Well, folks, looks like we're not just trying to save an emperor anymore. We might be the only thing standing between the Zephyrians and a whole lot of innocent people." Princess Zarathal stepped forward. "Captain Morrison, I know I have already asked too much of you. But if there is any way to contact the loyal forces of my empire, we might still have a chance." "Amy," Jake said, "can you get through to the Veltari homeworld?" "I'll try, sir," Amy replied, her hands already working at her controls. "But with all these ships around, it's going to be difficult." Jake watched the tactical display as more enemy ships appeared. The situation was getting worse by the minute, but he knew they could not give up. Too many lives depended on them finding a way to stop the invasion and save the Emperor. "Pete," he called over the comm, "how are those engines holding up?" "They're hot, Captain, but they'll keep running. Where are we headed?" Jake looked at Princess Zarathal, then at his crew. "We're going to find a way to turn this mess around, somehow." The Liberty's Edge jumped to hyperspace just as the Zephyrian battleship opened fire. Jake felt the familiar twist in his stomach as the ship entered the faster-than-light tunnel that would carry them away from the immediate danger, but he knew they could not run forever. The Zephyrians were already moving to attack the outer colonies, and time was running out for Princess Zarathal's father. "How long until we reach Zarian 7? Jake asked Amy as the ship settled into its hyperspace course. "About 18 hours at current speed, Captain," Amy replied. "But I'm still picking up long-range signals from the Zephyrian fleet. They're spreading out across the sector, hitting communication stations and supply depots." Princess Zarathal stood near the main view screen, her violet eyes reflecting the swirling colors of hyperspace. "They are moving faster than we expected. Captain Morrison, I fear that even if we succeed in finding the antidote, we may be too late to stop the invasion." "We'll worry about that when we get there," Jake said firmly. "First things first, tell me more about these precursor ruins. What exactly are we walking into?" The princess turned to face him, and Jake could see the worry in her expression. "The ruins on Zarian 7 are among the oldest in the galaxy. The precursors built them over 50,000 years ago, before they vanished from known space. The structures are made of a crystal-like material that seems to be alive in some way. It responds to the presence of different species." Pete looked up from his engineering station. "What do you mean by responds?" "The ruins test those who enter them," Princess Zarathal explained. "According to the ancient records, the precursors believed that true wisdom could only be achieved by those who were willing to sacrifice for others. The structures contain puzzles and challenges that reveal the true nature of those who seek their knowledge." Lisa frowned. "That sounds dangerous. What happens to people who fail these tests?" "They are rejected by the ruins," the princess said quietly. "Some are simply transported back to where they started. Others are not so fortunate. The ruins have been known to trap unworthy visitors forever." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "And you're sure that humans can pass these tests?" "I believe so," Princess Zarathal replied. "The ancient texts speak of beings who put the welfare of others before their own gain. During the recent war, human actions proved that your species possesses this quality. You rescued civilians from species you had never met before. You shared your food with hungry refugees. You gave your lives to protect people who could offer you nothing in return." "We just did what anyone would do," Jake said uncomfortably. "No, Captain," the princess said with certainty. "You did what humans would do. Most species in the galaxy would have calculated the costs and benefits before acting. Humans seem to act first and worry about the consequences later." Amy looked up from her station with a worried expression. "Captain, I'm getting some strange readings from the ship's sensors. We're still in hyperspace, but something is following us." Jake moved to look at the sensor display. There was indeed something there, a faint signature that seemed to be matching their course and speed. "Can you identify it?" "I'm not sure, sir. It's too small to be a ship, but it's definitely artificial. And it's getting closer." Princess Zarathal moved to Amy's station and studied the readings. Her face went pale. "Captain, I think that might be a Zephyrian tracking probe. They must have launched it just before we jumped to hyperspace. Can we shake it off?" Jake asked. Pete shook his head. "Not in hyperspace, Captain. We're locked into our course until we drop back into normal space." "How long until we reach Zarian 7? Jake asked again. 16 hours and 43 minutes, Amy replied. Jake made a decision. "Then we stay on course. If that probe is tracking us, the Zephyrians will know where we're going anyway. Our only chance is to get to the ruins before they can stop us." The next several hours passed slowly. Jake found himself talking with Princess Zarathal about her people and their history. He learned that the Veltari Empire had once been very different, more like humans in their willingness to help other species. But centuries of political struggles and wars had changed them, making them more cautious and self-interested. "My father tried to bring back the old ways," the princess explained as they sat in the ship's small lounge. "He believed that cooperation was stronger than domination. But many in our government saw his policies as weakness." "Is that why your uncle opposes you?" Jake asked. Yes, Uncle Vextar believes that only strength matters. He thinks that showing mercy or helping weaker species makes us look vulnerable to our enemies. Princess Zarathil looks sad. Perhaps the Zephian invasion will prove him right. Or maybe it will prove that your father was right all along, Jake said. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is ask for help when you need it. The princess smiled, the first genuine smile Jake had seen from her. I hope you are correct, Captain Morrison. When the Liberty's Edge finally dropped out of hyperspace near Zarian 7, Jake was amazed by what he saw. The planet was covered in massive crystal formations that seemed to glow with their own inner light. The structures were beautiful and alien, unlike anything he had ever seen before. The ruins are on the largest continent, Princess Zarathil said, pointing to a section of the planet where the crystal formations were especially dense. We will need to land near the main entrance. Captain, Amy said urgently, I'm detecting ships in the system. Multiple contacts and they're not friendly? Jake looked at the tactical display and cursed it under his breath. 3 Zephyrian destroyers. We're already in orbit around the planet, and more ships were arriving every few minutes. They got here first, Lisa said grimly. That tracking probe must have given them our destination. Can we slip past them? Jake asked. Pete shook his head. Not a chance, Captain. They've got the whole planet surrounded. Princess Zarathil stepped forward. Captain, there is another way. The ruins themselves are protected by an energy field that prevents most ships from landing directly on the surface. But smaller vessels, like shuttles, can sometimes get through. We don't have a shuttle, Jake pointed out. No, but we have escape pods, the princess replied. If we can get close enough to the planet, we might be able to use them to reach the surface. Jake considered the idea. It was risky, but it might be their only chance. Amy, can you scan the planet's surface? Find us a landing spot near the ruins, but away from the Zephyrian ships. I'm trying, sir, but the crystal formations are interfering with our sensors. I can't get a clear reading. The Liberty's Edge shook as energy bolts struck their shields. The Zephyrian ships had spotted them and were moving to attack. Shields down to 40%, Lisa reported. We can't take much more of this. Jake made his decision. Pete, get 2 escape pods ready. Amy, plot a course for the planet's surface. We're going to have to make this work. Captain, Princess Zarathil said, I should go alone. This is my quest, and I will not ask you to risk your life for my father. 2. Late for that, Jake replied. Besides, you said it yourself. The ruins only let humans inside. You're going to need me. The ship shook again as more energy bolts found their target. The Zephyrian ships were closing in, and Jake knew they had only minutes before the Liberty's Edge would be destroyed. Escape pods are ready, Pete announced. But Captain, you know these old pods weren't designed for atmospheric entry. There's a good chance they won't survive the landing. We'll have to take that chance, Jake said. Lisa, you're in command. Take the ship and get out of here. Try to contact the Veltari fleet and tell them what's happening. Captain, I'm not leaving you here, Lisa protested. That's an order, Jake said firmly. Someone needs to warn the colonies about the invasion. If we don't make it back, you're the only one who knows what's really going on. Princess Zarathil placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. Captain, are you sure about this? The trials in the ruins are dangerous, and I do not know what we will face. Jake looked at his crew, seeing the worry in their faces. These people had become his family over the years, and leaving them was one of the hardest things he had ever done. But he knew it was the right choice. I'm sure, he said. Amy, how long until we reach the planet? 2 minutes, sir. Jake nodded. Then let's go save an emperor. The escape pods launched from the Liberty's Edge just as the ship's shields failed completely. Jake watched through the pod's small window as his ship limped away from the planet, pursued by 2 of the Zephyrian destroyers. The 3rd destroyer turned its attention to the escape pods, but Princess Zarathil was right about the planet's defenses. As they entered the atmosphere, the crystal formations on the surface began to glow brighter, and some kind of energy field deflected the Zephyrian weapons. The landing was rough. Jake's escape pod crashed into a grove of crystal trees, and he felt like he had been hit by a truck. But he was alive, and when he crawled out of the wreckage, he could see Princess Zarathel's pod about 100 meters away. "Are you hurt?" he called out as she emerged from her pod. "I am well," she replied, though Jake could see that she was favoring her left arm. "The ruins are close. Can you see them?" Jake looked up and gasped. Rising before them was a structure that seemed to be carved from a single enormous crystal. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, pulsing with colors that seemed to shift. The entrance to the precursor ruins was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The crystal walls seemed to pulse with life, and strange symbols glowed softly in patterns that hurt his eyes to look at directly. As he and Princess Zarathil approached, the massive doors began to open without any sound at all. "The ruins recognize you," the princess said with wonder in her voice. "They know you are human." Jake felt a strange, tingling sensation as they stepped through the doorway. The air inside was warm and smelled like flowers, though he could not see any growing anywhere. The corridor ahead of them was lined with more of the glowing symbols, and soft music seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Stay close," Jake said, though he was not sure why he felt the need to whisper. "We don't know what kind of tests we're going to face." They had walked for only a few minutes when the corridor opened into a large circular room. In the center of the room was a pool of water that glowed with the same soft light as the walls. Around the pool were 3 pedestals, each holding a different object. "This is the first trial," Princess Zarathil said, reading from symbols that appeared on the wall. "The test of sacrifice. We must choose which object to take, but the choice will reveal our true nature." Jake looked at the 3 pedestals. On the first was a golden crown covered with jewels. On the second was a weapon that looked like it could destroy entire planets. On the third was a simple bowl made of plain metal. "What do they represent?" Jake asked. "Power, strength, and service," the princess replied. "According to the ancient texts, most beings choose either the crown or the weapon. They want to rule others or destroy their enemies." Jake walked around the pedestals, studying each object carefully. The crown was beautiful and would probably make whoever wore it very wealthy. The weapon was impressive and could solve many problems with force. But something about the simple bowl called to him. "The bowl," he said finally. "We take the bowl." "Princess." Zarathil looked surprised. "Are you certain, Captain?" "The bowl has no obvious power or value." "That's exactly why we should take it," Jake replied. He reached for the bowl, and as soon as his fingers touched it, the room filled with warm light. The pool in the center began to glow brighter, and a new doorway appeared in the far wall. "You have chosen wisely," a voice said, though Jake could not tell where it came from. "Those who seek to serve others rather than rule them may proceed." The next room was even stranger than the first. It contained what looked like a garden, but the plants were made of crystal and metal instead of living matter. In the center of the garden was a tree with silver leaves, and hanging from its branches were fruits that looked like they were made of light. "The second trial," Princess Zarathil read from new symbols. "The test of wisdom. We must tend the garden, but we can only use what we bring with us." Jake looked around the room. There were no tools, no water, and no soil. The only thing they had was the simple bowl from the first room. But then he remembered something his grandfather had taught him when he was young. "Sometimes the best tool is not a tool at all," Jake said. He knelt beside one of the crystal plants and began to speak to it, just as his grandfather had taught him to speak to the plants in their family garden. "I know you're not alive like the plants back home," he said softly. "But everything in the universe is connected somehow. Maybe you can hear me anyway." Princess Zarathil watched in amazement as the crystal plants began to glow brighter. The metal stems started to straighten, and new leaves appeared on the branches. Jake continued to talk to each plant, telling them about Earth and about the gardens he remembered from his childhood. "How did you know to do that?" the princess asked when the last plant had begun to flourish. "My grandfather always said that caring for something was more important than having the right tools," Jake replied. He said plants could tell when someone really cared about them. The tree with silver leaves began to shine, and one of the light fruits fell into Jake's hands. As soon as he touched it, he felt a warm sensation spread through his body, and suddenly he could understand the symbols on the walls without Princess Zarathil's help. "You have shown wisdom beyond your years," the voice said again. "Those who nurture life rather than exploit it may proceed." The third room was the most challenging yet. It was completely dark except for a single beam of light shining down from the ceiling. In the light stood a figure that looked exactly like Jake, but with cold, cruel eyes. "The third trial," Jake read from the symbols that now made sense to him. "The test of character. We must face ourselves and choose who we truly are." The false Jake stepped forward and spoke in Jake's own voice. "Why are you doing this? You could have stayed safe on your ship. You could have minded your own business and avoided all this danger. Instead, you're risking your life for aliens who will never appreciate what you've done." "Because it's the right thing to do," Jake replied. "Right for who?" the false Jake demanded. "These aliens have technology far beyond anything humans possess. They've been exploring space for thousands of years while we've barely left our own solar system. What makes you think we matter to them?" Jake felt doubt creeping into his mind. The false version of himself was saying things he had thought many times. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy. They were weak compared to species like the Veltari or the Zephyrians. What difference could they really make? "We matter because we choose to help," Jake said, though his voice was less certain than before. "We matter because we try to do what's right even when it's hard." "Pretty words," the false Jake sneered. "But what happens when this is over? Do you think the Veltari will remember your sacrifice? Do you think they'll treat humans as equals? Or will they go back to seeing us as primitive children who need to be protected from ourselves?" Jake looked at Princess Zarathil, who was watching the confrontation with worry in her violet eyes. He realized that she was facing her own test, probably dealing with her own doubts and fears. "Maybe they will forget," Jake said finally. "Maybe they'll go back to treating us like children. But that doesn't change anything. We don't help people because we want them to remember us or because we want something in return. We help because—" "That's who we are?" the false Jake laughed bitterly. "Noble words from someone who's about to get his crew killed. Lisa and Amy and Pete are probably dead already, destroyed by those Zephyrian ships while you chase after fairy tales in ancient ruins." Jake felt his heart clench with fear. His crew was his family, and the thought of losing them was almost too much to bear. But then he remembered something Lisa had said before they left. "When have we ever taken the easy path, Captain?" "My crew knew the risks," Jake said, his voice growing stronger. "They chose to help because that's who they are too. That's who humans are. We don't calculate odds or worry about whether we'll be appreciated. We see someone who needs help, and we help them." The false Jake's expression grew angrier. "And what about the princess? Do you really think she cares about you? She's using you just like her people have used every other species. Once she gets what she wants, you'll be discarded like trash." Jake looked at Princess Zarathil again. In her eyes he saw genuine concern and friendship. She had trusted him with her father's life and her people's future. She had shared her fears and hopes with him during the long journey to Zarian 7. "She's not using me," Jake said with complete certainty. "She's trusting me. There's a difference." The false Jake began to fade away, his expression changing from anger to something that might have been respect. "You really believe all that, don't you?" "Yes," Jake said simply, "I do." The room filled with light, and the false Jake disappeared completely. A new doorway opened, leading deeper into the ruins. "You have shown true character," the voice said. "Those who hold to their principles even in the face of doubt may proceed." The fourth room was smaller than the others, and in its center was a simple altar holding a vial of glowing liquid. Jake knew immediately that this was the antidote they had come to find. "The final trial," Princess Zarathil read, her voice filled with hope. "The test of sacrifice. To claim what you seek, you must give up something of equal value." Jake approached the altar, and new symbols appeared on its surface. As he read them, his heart sank. The price for the antidote was clear: whoever took it would absorb part of the burden that came with leadership. They would feel the weight of every decision, the pain of every loss, and the responsibility for every life under their care. "Captain," Princess Zarathel said softly, "I cannot ask you to pay this price. The burden of leadership among my people is terrible. My father has aged decades in just a few years because of the weight he carries." Jake looked at the vial, then at the princess. He thought about Emperor Catherine dying from poison while his empire fell apart. He thought about the Zephyrian invasion, and all the innocent people who would suffer if the Veltari could not unite to fight back. He thought about his crew, risking their lives to give him this chance. "Some burdens are worth carrying," Jake sighed. He reached for the vial. The moment his fingers touched the crystal container, Jake felt a rush of sensations flood through his mind. He could feel the fears and hopes of billions of Veltari citizens. He could sense the weight of decisions that would affect entire star systems. But along with the burden came something else. As Jake and Princess Zarathel emerged from the precursor ruins, the sky above them was filled with flashing lights and explosions. The battle in space had grown larger while they were inside, and Jake could see dozens of ships fighting among the stars. "We need to get off this planet," Jake said, looking around for any sign of a working ship. The escape pods they had used to reach the surface were completely destroyed, and there was no sign of any other vessels nearby. Princess Zarathel pointed toward a ridge about a mile away. "There, I can see a Veltari shuttle. It must have crashed during the battle." They ran across the crystal landscape, dodging falling debris from the space battle above. When they reached the shuttle, Jake was relieved to see that it was damaged, but still flyable. The communication system was working, and Amy's voice crackled through the speakers. "Captain, is that you?" Amy's voice was filled with relief and worry. "We've been trying to reach you for hours." "We're here, Amy," Jake replied. "We have the antidote." "What's the situation up there?" "It's bad, sir," Amy said. "The Zephyrian fleet is huge, much bigger than we expected. But there's good news, too." Princess Zarathel's message got through to the Veltari homeworld. Emperor Catherine's loyal forces are on their way. Jake felt the new burden of leadership he carried help him understand the situation clearly. He could sense the fear and confusion of the various fleets above, the desperation of both sides, and the need for someone to bring order to the chaos. "Amy, can you patch me through to all ships in the area?" Jake asked. "I think so, sir." "But, Captain, General Vextar's ships are still hunting for us. If we broadcast our location, they'll find us." "That's exactly what I want," Jake said. Princess Zarathel looked at him with surprise, but she could see the determination in his eyes. Within minutes, Jake was speaking to every ship in the system. His voice carried across the communication channels to Veltari cruisers, Zephyrian battleships, and the few human vessels that had arrived to help. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship Liberty's Edge," he began. "I'm speaking to all of you because we're facing a choice that will decide the future of this entire sector of the galaxy." The fighting in space began to slow as ship captains listened to the unexpected transmission from the planet's surface. "The Zephyrians are attacking because they believe the Veltari Empire is weak and divided," Jake continued. "General Vextar is fighting his own niece because he believes only strength matters, but both sides are wrong." General Vextar's voice cut across the communications channel. "Human, you dare to lecture us about our own affairs. You know nothing of the complexities of galactic politics." "You're right," Jake replied calmly. "Humans don't know much about galactic politics. But we know something about working together when times are hard. We know that fighting each other only makes us weaker against our real enemies." The Zephyrian commander's harsh voice joined the conversation. "The human speaks words, but words will not save you. The Veltari Empire will fall, and your colonies will burn." Jake felt the weight of leadership pressing down on him, but it also gave him clarity about what needed to be done. "Princess Zarathel and I have just returned from the precursor ruins with the antidote that will save Emperor Catherine's life. But that's not the most important thing we found there." "What did you find?" General Vextar demanded. "We found proof that cooperation is stronger than conflict," Jake said. The precursors built their civilization on the idea that helping others makes everyone stronger. They lasted for thousands of years because they understood something that we seem to have forgotten. Princess Zarethel stepped forward and spoke into the communication system. Uncle, the captain is right. Father's policies of cooperation were not weakness. They were wisdom. The Zephyrians attack us now because they know we are divided. If we continue to fight among ourselves, we will all fall. Niece, General Vextar's voice was softer now, your father is dying. Even if this antidote works, he is too weak to lead. U.S. in war, then we lead together, Princess Zarethel replied. You command the military forces, and I will handle the diplomatic efforts. Captain Morrison has shown me that humans have skills we need. They can help us coordinate our defenses in ways we never considered. Jake could sense the hesitation in General Vextar's thoughts. The Veltari general was a proud man, but he was also genuinely concerned about his people's survival. The Zephyrians will not negotiate, General Vextar said finally. They believe only in conquest. Then we give them a choice, Jake said. They can face a divided Veltari empire that's easy to defeat, or they can face a united alliance that includes humans, Veltari, and every other species that values freedom over conquest. The Zephyrian commander laughed harshly. Foolish human. Our fleet is 3 times larger than anything you can assemble. Your alliance will crumble before our might. But Jake could sense doubt in the Zephyrian's voice. The alien commander had expected to face a broken empire, not a united front. Jake pressed his advantage. Maybe your fleet is bigger, Jake said. But you're fighting in our territory now, against people who are defending their homes. And you're fighting against species who have learned to work together instead of trying to conquer each other. Amy's voice came through the shuttle's communications. Captain, I'm detecting more ships arriving in the system. It looks like the Emperor's loyal fleet has arrived, and they're being joined by ships from at least 6 other species. Jake smiled. Word of the crisis had spread, and the galaxy's peaceful species were rallying to help defend the sector. General Vextar, Jake said, your niece and I are coming up in a shuttle. We have the antidote for your brother, and we have a plan to end this invasion. Will you hear us out? There was a long pause before General Vextar replied. You may approach. But if this is some kind of trick, I will destroy you myself. The flight to General Vextar's flagship was tense, but Jake felt confident about their chances. The burden of leadership he now carried helped him understand how to bring different groups together, how to find common ground even among enemies. When they docked with the Veltari cruiser, General Vextar was waiting for them. Up close, Jake could see that the alien general was older than he had appeared on the view screen, and there was genuine worry in his violet eyes. Uncle, Princess Zarethel said, as she handed him the vial of antidote, this will save Father's life, but Captain Morrison is right about working together. We need each other if we're going to survive this. General Vextar studied Jake carefully. Human, what makes you think you can help us defeat the Zephyrians? Because humans are good at finding solutions that nobody else thinks of, Jake replied. We're also good at getting different groups to work together. During our war with the Zephyrian raiders, we learned their weaknesses. Over the next hour, Jake outlined his plan. The Zephyrians were excellent at large-scale battles, but they struggled with coordinated attacks from multiple directions. Human ships were fast and maneuverable, perfect for hit-and-run tactics. Veltari ships had powerful weapons and strong shields, ideal for direct confrontation. We use our strengths to cover their weaknesses, Jake explained. Human ships draw their attention and force them to spread out their formations. Then the Veltari heavy cruisers hit them when they're vulnerable. General Vextar nodded slowly. It could work, but it requires perfect timing and communication between our fleets. That's where other species come in, Princess Zarethel added. The Kathrani are excellent at communications. The Zorlak have ships that can jam enemy sensors. If we all work together, we can give the Zephyrians more problems than they can handle. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of massive fleets crashing into each other, it was a carefully orchestrated dance of different species using their unique abilities to support each other. Human ships zipped between the larger vessels, confusing Zephyrian targeting systems and drawing fire away from their allies. Veltari cruisers used the openings to strike with devastating effect. Other species provided support with jamming, communications, and specialized weapons. Jake found himself coordinating the entire battle, from the bridge of General Vextar's flagship. The burden of leadership he carried helped him sense what each group needed and how to keep them working together. The turning point came when the Zephyrian commander realized that his fleet was fighting not just the Veltari, but a true alliance of species that supported each other. His forces began to retreat, unable to cope with the coordinated attacks from so many different directions. "This is not over, human," the Zephyrian commander said as his fleet withdrew. "We will return with greater numbers." "Maybe," Jake replied. "But next time you'll be facing an even stronger alliance. Other species have seen what we can accomplish when we work together." 3 days later, Jake stood on the Bridge of the Liberties edge as it approached the Veltari homeworld. Emperor Kethran had recovered completely after taking the antidote, and the crisis had brought about changes that nobody had expected. "The Emperor wants to meet with you personally," Princess Zarethel said. She had been named heir to the throne and was already working on reforms that would make the Empire more cooperative with other species. "I'm honored," Jake said. "But I think my crew and I need to get back to our regular